All right, it's Saturday, June 27th, 2020. We are live. How's everybody doing? Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian. So, hope everyone's well. Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. Okay, so I wanted to do an update dealing with what's going on with coronavirus. There has been records broken for daily infections nationwide, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Also, we see that 6 states have broken daily records as well. So there's a lot taking place with coronavirus. We're seeing that states are having to reverse their reopening orders. We see that with states like Texas and Florida. And once again, a lot of this is Donald Trump's fault. Okay, Donald Trump put pressure on a lot of these Republican governors to open back up the states prematurely. Not only that, they what a lot of these states did was they did not follow the White House guidelines when it came to reopening the country. All right, a lot of these states did not have 14 consecutive days of declining coronavirus cases, and they opened up too soon to please Donald Trump, and all this is blowing up in their face. Okay, this is what's taking place. All right, so let's jump into this. We're going to look at some updates from Washington Post. I'm going to give you some articles also. Everybody stay safe. I wear a KN95 mask wherever I go. With the mask, it protects other people from you in case you're asymptomatic. But that's like with the regular surgical mask. But with other masks, like the KN95 mask, not only does it protect other people from you, but with other masks that fit better, it protects you more so from droplets coming from people than other types of masks or other types of just basic facial coverings. Okay, but still the majority of the benefit is to other people to protect them from you in case you're asymptomatic, in case you have coronavirus and don't know it and are spreading it. Also, what we're seeing is an increasing number of cases of coronavirus among people who are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s as well. All right, so you had a lot of people who thought that this was over, coronavirus is over. You have people on social media predicting coronavirus is going to be over in May and all this nonsense like this. No, it's not. I told people, no, it's not going away. It's going to get worse. All right, and if you understand a virus, viruses hit in waves. When we studied the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, that virus hit in waves. The second wave that came towards the fall and then going into the winter of 1918 was worse than the first wave. All right, so we have to understand this, and we're still in the first wave also here. Okay, we haven't even hit the second wave yet. What's happening is that we're dealing with incompetent leadership in the White House. And we're dealing with Donald Trump, who doesn't even give a damn about his own followers. So he's holding these super spreader campaign rallies. He held one in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tulsa of all places. Because June 2020 is the 99th year anniversary of the massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma, June 1st, 1921. Okay, when approximately 15,000 white people invaded Tulsa and destroyed a lot of it and killed hundreds of African Americans. Some estimates go up to 1,000. Destroyed about 1,200 homes, destroyed hundreds of our businesses, etc. Okay, all right. So let's jump into this. How's everybody doing? I just want to give you an overview, and we'll get into this information. Also, if you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $the AHN Show. At Cash App, $the AHN Show through Cash App, or paypal.me/the AHN Show through PayPal. PayPal.me/the AHN Show through PayPal. And then also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right. So let's look at some of these updates. So if we look at the updates from Washington Post, we look at the, I have the latest ones up here. Okay, so facing a surge of new coronavirus cases, Texas Governor Greg Abbott expressed regret. He's a Republican, expressed regret for allowing bars to reopen so early, saying Friday that he did not realize how fast the virus would spread. He did not realize how fast the virus would spread. He said, if I could go back and redo anything, it would probably have been to slow down the opening of bars, and now seeing the aftermath of how quickly the coronavirus spreads in the bar setting. He said in an evening interview with KVIA in El Paso, Texas. So we see that Florida Republican Governor, dumbass Ron DeSantis, and I guarantee you, if the African-American candidate Andrew Gillum had become governor of the state of Florida, it would be a different story. I guarantee you Andrew Gillum would have been much more responsible and wouldn't be focused on trying to open back up the economy in Florida too soon, because you jeopardize people's lives. And the lives you jeopardize the most are those of African Americans and Hispanics, because those are the frontline workers. Okay, oftentimes many of the frontline workers are African Americans and Hispanics. And when you're calling people back to work, okay, you're pushing a lot of the African Americans back into environments that allow coronavirus to spread. Okay, so we have to understand how this also disproportionately impacts African Americans and Hispanics when we're talking about opening back up too soon. And if you don't go, if you're collecting unemployment and your job calls you back, if you don't go back to that job, you can lose your unemployment. So people are going back to jobs that are not protecting them from coronavirus oftentimes because the economy was opened up too soon, and they're risking their health trying to earn a wage. Okay, so for the third day in a row, the United States set a single day record for new cases, new coronavirus cases, with 44,702 being reported on Friday, June 26. 44,702 being reported on Friday, June 26. That's the reporting from the Washington Post. 13 states set their own records for the average number of new cases reported over the 7 days. 13 new states set their own records for the average number of new cases reported over the 7 days. If we look at some other highlights, we see that we see the reporting from June 26, 2020. 6 states set new single-day highs, led by Florida with 8,942 cases, more than 60% higher than its previous high set on Wednesday. So we're seeing states setting records 3 days in a row. The same states setting records Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And a lot of this also is attributed to Memorial Day weekend. Memorial Day weekend, in a lot of these states, they have beaches open, like in Florida, things like this, nightclubs open, bars open, etc. And a lot of people, because they heard that the state was reopening, they thought everything was back to normal. Okay? And weren't wearing masks, weren't practicing social distancing, thinking everything is back to normal, and it's not. And this thing is exploding. And this is negatively going to impact a lot of businesses, because you have businesses, you have restaurateurs, things like this, saying we can't shut down, then open back up for 2 or 3 weeks, and then shut back down. We're not going to be able to exist. We're going to go out of business. Okay? So once again, this is an example of what happens when you have incompetent leadership. And this is one incompetent 2-year-old toddler tweeting and throwing temper tantrums on Twitter, putting pressure on Republican governors to open back up, and this is jeopardizing people's lives. All right, everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. Follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network on Facebook, and my personal page, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep on YouTube. Okay. All right, let's continue. So we see that Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Idaho, Utah also set new single-day records. This was on Friday. Okay, so we saw Florida set a new single-day record, and then we saw Florida with 8,942 cases, more than 60% higher than its previous high set on Wednesday. Then we saw Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Idaho, and Utah. They all set records as well. Now, Florida announced Friday morning that bars must close immediately. They said bars, if I remember correctly, the reporting was they had to close by noon, because I know that's what Texas said. A move echoed by Texas, a state also dealing with a surge in cases and nearing its capacity to care for those suffering. Okay, both states, Texas and Florida, are backtracking amid a crisis of rising hospitalizations and skyrocketing infection rates. It's not just an increase in cases. It's not just deaths. It's also hospitals being overrun, the ICU beds being overrun, and them reaching hospitals reaching capacity and having to turn away people who have to be hospitalized because of coronavirus, which means that's going to lead to more deaths for people who can't be incubated. One, two, an increase in people who die in the hospital also. Houston, Texas is being ravaged by this. With a high African American population, Houston, Texas is being ravaged by this. Now, when we look at dumbass Donald Trump, okay, he is risking the lives of his followers coming to these super spreader events, like in Arizona, like in Tulsa, and they have to sign a waiver that if they get coronavirus, if they get sick, what have you, they won't sue the Trump campaign or anybody involved. Well, you know you're putting them at risk. You're giving out masks at these events, but you're not making it mandatory that they wear them. They're not, in general, not practicing social distancing at these Trump rallies. And most people are not wearing masks because it becomes a cultural statement not to wear the mask in defiance of science. Now, what's interesting when we go through and analyze this, right? We saw a number of members of Trump's staff who were part of the advance team in Tulsa, 6 of them caught coronavirus. We see a number of Secret Service agents around Trump who have to be quarantined because some of them came down with coronavirus and others had to be quarantined. Donald Trump gets tested every day. You have people in various states in line for hours trying to get a test. This dumbass won't wear a mask. He's not advocating for people to wear masks. He gets tested every day and requires many people around him to wear masks. But he's projecting this image that puts people in danger, puts his followers in danger, and is inviting them to these super spreader events. And a lot of these dumbasses are going to die. And this is the same person talking about make America great again. Elections have consequences. These decisions are impacting the lives of people all across the country and impacting the economy. So in 2016, when you had people on social media saying we don't need to vote, all we need to do is invest in the stock market and build businesses and build 5-story buildings and start businesses, I said that's good, we need to do that, but you have to understand politics is the legal distribution of scarce wolf pound resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. And politics creates and impacts the economic environment that your business with this 5-story building operates in. So it's estimated that 45 to 50% of African American owned businesses are not going to survive this coronavirus economy. BlackEnterprise.com has an article dealing with this. Elections have consequences. So when you listen to my Sunday night show, the African History Network show, what we're going to do, because this Sunday we're going to have, last Sunday, June 21st, I was joined by one of my teachers, Dr. Linda Jeffries. We had a fantastic discussion dealing with the new documentary, Hapi, that deals with the connection between economics and economic empowerment in ancient African civilizations. And also, Professor James Small is in the documentary. So Professor James Small will be my guest June 22nd, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Sunday on the African History Network show. So you can watch that right here, Facebook, the African History Network, on YouTube, Michael Imhotep. And Brother Taki, who's the director of the film, he was trying to get me in the film. He told me about the film about a year and a half ago, and we were trying to connect sometimes when I was in New York, and we could never connect. But I'm on the promotions team, the media team, to help promote this fantastic documentary also. Okay, so let's continue here. Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. You're not going to hear a lot of this type of information other places. I don't just study history, I also study law and politics as well. Okay, yeah, some people comment on politics, but they don't study. I study all of this. All right, so let's see here. We have Ariane, we got Donna, Mark, just a few of the people watching on Facebook. And then we'll check in with people on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP, also in just a minute. Okay, I'm trying a new lighting system. How's the lighting in here? I'm trying a new lighting system. I have this Halo Light Pro that I got. It's on a stand. It's on a stand, and it's a new lighting system. So I'm checking this out as well. Okay, we got Roz S, Mr. Super on YouTube EZ. She ran herself. Hey, she ran herself fit. That's Felicia. SheRanHerselfFit.com. And Sharon, just a few of the people watching on YouTube. Okay. All right, let's continue here. All right, let's look at some more of these updates. Okay, so now both states, Florida and Texas, are backtracking amid a crisis of rising hospitalizations and skyrocketing infection rates. Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued an executive order that revised restrictions on bars and restaurants and certain types of outdoor recreation one day after suggesting that he would not. He's under tremendous pressure. One day after suggesting that he would not go backwards, he was forced to do that. Okay? And he issued an executive order that revised restrictions on bars, restaurants, and certain types of outdoor recreation one day after suggesting that he would not. Now, nationally, 44,702 new infections were reported by state health departments on Friday, June 26, 2020, surpassing the previous record of 39,327 set the day before. So actually, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, there were nationwide records set each day. Okay, let me look at let's look at a couple more updates, because I printed out a bunch of stuff. You know, we're not going to go through all this, but I want to keep abreast of all of what's taking place. Okay, so a federal judge in California on Friday ordered the release of migrant children being held with their parents at the country's 3 family detention facilities, citing coronavirus outbreaks at 2 of the centers. We posted a big article about this. I think it was the article from NBCnews.com. It's on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network. Everybody check that out. We also saw that coronavirus is impacting the stock market. We saw on Friday the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is an industrial average of 30 corporations. It lost 730 points. About 2.8%, as rising coronavirus infections roiled investors Friday is going to continue, because this ain't going to stop. This is not going to stop. And we saw that the Trump administration held the first coronavirus task force press conference in 60 days. Because Donald Trump has, if you haven't figured this out yet, Donald Trump has basically given up on coronavirus. He's basically given up on it. He's just trying to happy talk it away. And that's not going to work. It's going to get worse. We're on track to hit 200,000 deaths between September and October 2020. We're on track to hit 200,000 deaths. Now, back in February, he said it's only about 15 people that have it. Pretty soon it'll be down to 0. I have been telling you for months, there may be a 0 in the number, but the number's not going to be anywhere near 0. Right now we're at, if we look at Johns Hopkins University, you can go to rcgis.com. rcgis.com has the official count from Johns Hopkins University. We're at 2.4 million, almost 2.5 million cases, known cases in the U.S. Now, we saw that the CDC put out a statement earlier this week that it's highly possible that it's 10 times as many people who have had coronavirus than we actually think. Also, you're going to find that it was a lot of people who had coronavirus and died from it before we actually knew what it was also. This is an example of what happens when you have somebody who has declared war on the scientists for the past 3 years. Somebody who does not read their presidential daily briefings. You've heard me talk about this before. Somebody who, we saw that John Bolton, National Security Advisor John Bolton, who has his little book out now, who didn't want to testify in front of Congress during the impeachment trial, impeachment hearing in the House, and he said he would testify in the impeachment trial in the Senate, but Republicans didn't call him because they knew he was going to spill the beans on Trump. This is why every last one of these traitorous Republican senators who did not vote to remove Trump from office, those that are up for re-election November 3rd, 2020, they have to be voted out of office. These are all traitors. They take an oath to defend the U.S. Constitution against enemies, both foreign and domestic. Donald Trump is an enemy of the state. Donald Trump is an enemy to the U.S. Constitution. And they are derelict in their duties. Every last one of these traitors needs to be voted out of office. And this is what happens when you don't understand the U.S. Constitution. I encourage everybody to go to loc.gov, Library of Congress website. Read the U.S. Constitution, because I just did a training for an environmental justice organization here earlier in the week, and I was dealing with history and racial justice and things like this. And it's a lot of people who are activists who mean well, but they don't understand history and law. If you understand history and law, a lot of this stuff falls into place and you know how to proceed. And as you've heard me say before, people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past and the present and the future to meet the needs of the community. Okay, let's continue with the updates. All right, so Vice President Mike Pence said during the White House Coronavirus Task Force briefing, where he did not wear a mask, by the way, he said that it is very encouraging news that half of the increasing cases in Florida and Texas are among America. He said it is very encouraging news that half of the increasing cases in Florida and Texas are among Americans under 35 because younger people tend to have less serious outcomes. How the hell is that encouraging? It's not encouraging because, one, you have an increase in the cases. Two, if we look at the reporting from a big article from New York Times. Let's go to this article here. I printed this up. Just give me a minute because I have a ton of articles here. New York Times is a big article dealing with how there's a significant increase in the number of cases among people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. As virus surges, younger people account for a disturbing number of cases. As virus surges, younger people account for a disturbing number of cases. Now, their mortality rate is going to be less in general. However, if they have pre-existing conditions, like a lot of African Americans in their 20s, 30s, and 40s have, because they have high blood pressure, they have diabetes, they have lupus, okay? They have heart disease, you're more likely to have to suffer a severe case or die if you have those pre-existing conditions. There are a lot of African Americans in their 20s, 30s, and 40s who suffer from those things, who suffer from those pre-existing conditions. People in their 20s, 30s, and 40s account for a growing proportion of the cases in many places, raising fears that asymptomatic young people are helping fuel the virus spread. How the hell is that encouraging? That's not. That's more dangerous, because they're more likely to be less responsible. If you look at Florida, if you look at various states, you see governors, like right here in the state of Michigan, you see Governor Gretchen Whitmer having to slow down some of this reopening because we're seeing parties taking place. We're seeing people not practicing social distancing, people not wearing masks, which is going to increase the spread. And we see a little increase in the number of cases here in the state of Michigan. Now, it's not on the level of Florida and Texas, but you want to keep that from happening. Younger people are making up a growing percentage of new coronavirus cases in cities and states where the virus is now surging, a trend that has alarmed public health officials and prompted renewed pleas for masks and social distancing. Now, the health officials are not saying this is encouraging. Dumbass Vice President Mike Pence, okay? This is an example of how elections have consequences. Dumbass Vice President Mike Pence said it is very encouraging news that half of the increasing cases in Florida and Texas are among Americans under 35 years old. Well, they could be asymptomatic. They can take it back to their grandparents, and it could kill them. How the hell is that encouraging? Mike Pence should not even have been there yesterday at the press conference. It should have just been Dr. Deborah Birx and Anthony Fauci and some of the people who made sense. He should not have even been there. In Arizona, read this article from the New York Times. I'm gonna give you the links to all these articles here, okay? Because we have them, and I've been so busy working, I haven't had a chance to do broadcasts, only my Sunday night broadcast. But I'm going over this information and preparing for the Sunday night show. And I said, I had Professor James Small on Sunday, if you heard my interview with Dr. Leonard Jeffries last week, I asked Dr. J, how's he doing? It took him 15 minutes to he started talking about history, all this stuff. We spent 15 minutes on how he's doing, right? So I only had 2 hours in the show. So I said, I got to get some of this information out before the show. I'm going to give you the link to this article from the New York Times. You have to read this article. As virus surges, younger people account for a disturbing number of cases. It goes on to say, in Arizona, where drive-up sites are overwhelmed by young people seeking coronavirus tests, people ages 20 to 44 account for nearly half of all cases. How the hell is that good? Mike Pence? In Florida. Now, when you go study this in Arizona, that people are waiting in line. They're waiting in their cars in line for hours to get the test. They have a drive-up test site. People in their hours, 6, 7, 8 hours. They're telling them to come in a car that has air conditioning that works, and come with a full tank of gas, because you're going to be here for a long time. What the hell do you have to lose? If you've been watching my broadcasts and my shows, I told you, when Donald Trump asked African Americans in 2016, what the hell do you have to lose? The correct answer was everything. The correct answer was everything. And what I've been doing the past 6 weeks on my show, I've been going through Joe Biden's 22-page agenda for African Americans, dealing with his policies impacting the African American community. It's broken into 6 parts. We went through each week and broke down the different part. Pages 2 through 11, almost half of it deals with economic empowerment for African Americans. We then compared his policies to Donald Trump's policies, because elections have consequences. And elections are not about one, especially a presidential election. It's not about one person versus another person. This is about ideology and the trajectory of the country. The trajectory of the country, the direction of the country for the next 20, 30 years. There were 4,000 positions Donald Trump had to fill in his administration. what I'm going to do in subsequent shows, since we went through and broke down the 6 parts of Joe Biden's agenda, and as updates come out, because it's a living document, there are going to be updates to it also. We're then going to deal with the cabinet positions of the president. First we'll deal with the duties of the president based upon Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution. There's 7 articles to the U.S. Constitution and 27 amendments. Article 1 deals with the powers of Congress. And it's the Constitution, especially Article 1, that creates the Electoral College, creates the U.S. Postal Service, creates things like the Department of Justice, creates the Supreme Court, creates the Electoral College, creates the U.S. Census Bureau and the census. All that comes from the U.S. Constitution. This is why it's important to understand that, because if you understand the foundational law in this country, then the moves that are being made make a whole lot more sense, and you understand how to defend yourself against these things that are taking place. So as I explain to people, elections are not just about what people can do for you. It's also about understanding how to block what people are trying to do to you. But if you don't understand history, law, and policies and how these impact you, you don't understand how to defend yourself against this. This is this whole concept that I teach about called political self-defense. And we'll get into political self-defense on my Sunday night show. I deal with 6 principles of political self-defense, understanding how laws and policies impact the economic conditions of African Americans, but they impact everything. There were 100 environmental policies and regulations that Donald Trump has either reversed or weakened that were under the Obama administration. They were either put in place under the Obama administration or they were kept in place by the Obama administration. Trump has reversed 100. New York Times has a big article that lists all of them, dealing with water, dealing with the environment, dealing with illegal dumping, all different types of things like this. And environmental racism disproportionately negatively impacts African Americans. So when I hear people talk about not voting, I have to ask the question, either you don't understand the impact of laws and policies and how they negatively impact us or positively impact us, or you're being paid to tell us not to vote. I'll leave that there. All right. There could be another option. They could just be, don't know any better. But it's like, let's look at it like this. If the African American vote didn't matter, why do Republicans work so hard to suppress the African American vote? Because it costs money to suppress the vote. If the African American, why do Republicans fear the African American vote more than many of us value it? Well, because they've read the Constitution and they understand the power of the vote, and they understand what keeps they understand the power of the U.S. Congress, U.S. House of Representatives, U.S. Senate, the presidency, and everything that they want to do is based upon laws and policies. So they understand they have to have the right people in place to write the laws and policies that they want and keep certain people out of office. This is why in 2016, and we're going to come back to coronavirus, but all this stuff is connected, because Donald Trump is going to get a lot of his followers killed, inviting them to these super spreader events, these rallies that he's having. Okay? In 2016, I was doing nationally syndicated radio 5 days a week. I was doing nationally syndicated radio 5 days a week on the Empowerment Radio Network, and I was doing local radio here in Detroit 2 days a week. I watched about 100 interviews and campaign rallies that Donald Trump did. 2015, 2016 presidential election cycle. I saw dozens of interviews with Donald Trump supporters. I saw focus groups with them, things like this. Some of them were diehard Donald Trump supporters. Some of them were reluctant Donald Trump supporters. All the other Republican candidates dropped out, and he was the last resort. But many of them talked about what their agenda was. Their agenda, they said, were the courts. the U.S. Supreme Court and the federal court, not the basketball court. The U.S. Supreme Court and the federal courts, they said this is about the courts. So whichever Republican candidate could win and nominate right-wing conservative judges that they wanted, that's who they were going with, because they had an agenda. They said this is about the courts. So Donald Trump just got his 200th confirmation of conservative right-wing judges with the help of Moscow Mitch McConnell in the Senate. This is why Republicans work so hard to control the Senate. And these federal judges are lifetime appointments. He's gotten 200 confirmed. He has nominated about 1/4 of the federal judges. These are lifetime appointments. These people that he put on the bench with the help of Moscow Mitch McConnell and Republicans in the U.S. Senate, they will be federal judges for the next 20, 25, 30, 35, some cases 40 years. Because it's a lifetime appointment. They don't run for election. So you have people playing grandmaster level chess and other people playing beginner's checkers and don't even know all the rules to checkers. So the Trump administration official coordinating tests for the novel coronavirus did a partial pivot Friday, announcing that the government would briefly extend its management of 5 testing sites in Texas, a state with a recent spike of cases and hospitalizations, because Donald Trump wanted to stop the funding, once the funding runs out, to fund testing sites in certain states. He didn't want to renew that because this fool this past week said the reason why we have more coronavirus cases is because we're doing more testing. That's not necessarily the case, because if the spread of coronavirus if the spread of coronavirus was slowing down, you can do more tests, but the infection rate would be lower. Okay? But that's not the case. The infection rate is higher because it's spreading faster. And just because you don't test don't mean you don't have cases, because the people still have symptoms. They still need to be hospitalized, and they'll still die. That's like saying if we don't do pregnancy tests, there won't be any pregnancies. That's just ridiculous. But this is the type of misleadership that exists right now. And people are dying because of simple Simon as nonsense like this. Now, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's leading infectious disease doctor, urged Americans to see their role in taking safety precautions as a societal responsibility. Societal responsibility. He begged them not to let their guards down, even if the risk to let their own health is considered, even if the risk to their own health is considered minimal, because they can still transport it. They can. They could be asymptomatic. It takes between usually 2 to 14 days for symptoms to show up once you've been infected. Okay? But you can be infected and infect other people and not have any symptoms. This is why, man, be quite honest with you, I'm going around Detroit and I see people sitting down in restaurants eating like everything's normal. Dude, it's going to be a long time before I sit down eating at a restaurant. I'll order takeout. We want to support the restaurants. I'm not saying don't support the restaurants, because a lot of those restaurants employ African Americans. Some of them are owned by African Americans. We want to support the restaurant. But I ain't sitting down, especially inside. Dude, that is risky, because there's other people inside and you're breathing that air. If it's outside, it's less of a risk outside, but I don't want to be stationary like that. This is serious. In another sign that hopes of a swift economic recovery may be losing steam, the number of homeowners delaying their mortgage payments shot up by 79,000. You've heard me talk about this. On the back end of this is going to be major evictions and foreclosures. This is going to be an economic catastrophe. Once the moratoriums on evictions run out, there's going to be major evictions across the country and foreclosures. It's not just going to be tenants and people who own homes to live in. It's going to be people who own rental property and can't pay the mortgages on it because they weren't getting payments from tenants and things like this. There's going to be an economic catastrophe on the other end, on the other side of this coronavirus. Read the updates from Washington Post. Well, we'll post a link here. We'll post a link here with these updates. Go to Washington Post, and they're making a lot of these updates free for people. I subscribe to Washington Post. I subscribe to the New York Times. Pay them every month for digital subscriptions. But this Washington Post is making a lot of this information dealing with coronavirus free. Portugal is reinstating lockdown measures for about 700,000 people in 19 civil parishes around Lisbon, Portugal, next week after a worrying rise in cases in communities in the capital outskirts. Okay, all right. So those are some updates. And let me just make sure. Miami-Dade County, beaches in Miami-Dade County in Florida will close over the 4th of July weekend out of concerns for social distancing amid the pandemic. Because Memorial Day weekend, they had the beaches open and things like this. People just going out there. I saw them interviewing people at the beaches on MSNBC. I'm like, this makes no sense. And I understand people have been cooped up in the house and they want to get out, things like this. That ain't the way to do it. I'm telling you, go for a walk. 6 states see record number of new cases. As the United States, I'm looking at updates from the Washington Post here, and we just posted the link on our Facebook fan page, and we'll post it here on our YouTube channel with these updates. I printed it out, came out to 41 pages. And once again, see, I've been studying coronavirus since January. So when a lot of people in February and March were doing Oprah, Gail, Jada Pinkett Smith, Snoop Dogg, Gail Oprah videos, all that stuff, I was studying coronavirus going back to January. Because I'm looking at what's coming, and I know the history of the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918, and I'm like, this could be something huge. Now, when we go look at the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, 675,000 Americans died from that. In 2 years, from 1918 to 1919, 675,000 Americans died. 50 million people, at least 50 million people worldwide died from that. And we had an incompetent president at that time also, Woodrow Wilson. History is repeating itself. So as the United States logged a record number of infections Friday, 6 states announced record high single-day case totals. The states Georgia, Utah, South Carolina, Tennessee, Idaho, and Florida. Most of them have Republican governors. Most of these states are in the, most of them are in the South, with the exception of Idaho. Okay, a lot of these are former Confederate states, and there's a correlation between people who hold on to the Confederacy and these Confederate monuments and the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia under General Robert E. Lee's army, which a lot of people think is the Confederate flag. It's not. It's the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia under General Robert E. Lee's army, right? The flag that was on the Dukes of Hazzard car. There were 3 flags that flew over the Confederate States of America from 1861 to 1865. That flag was never one of them. Okay, just so people understand. But there's an interesting correlation between a lot of these white Republicans in these former Confederate states holding on to Confederate statues and ignorant of science and denouncing the science, right? And they're holding on to the past, and these Confederate monuments are honoring traitors to the Union. So Donald Trump recently made statements talking about how we want to protect our troops, something to the effect of we want to protect our troops, protect the military, respect the troops, and he talked about preserving the Confederate monuments and things like this. Well, when you understand the Civil War, you understand these 11 states seceded from the Union, took up arms against the Union, and killed members of the U.S. military. These were traitors to the Union based upon Article 3, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution. You can't, on the one hand, talk about protecting U.S. troops and honoring the troops, and then at the same time, you honor traitors to the Union that killed U.S. troops. It's not logical, but look who said it. So Georgia reported 4 straight days of more than 1,700 new daily infections, and 2 days in a row, of records. The 1,900 cases reported by state health officials Friday surpassed the previous record of 1,714 cases announced Thursday. And I think Atlanta is being hit. Usually the African American cities, the large African American cities, large populations, are being hit hard by this. The 7-day average of new infections also hit a new high, 1,569, and has been rising steadily since late May. That figure is up about 77% from a week ago, and nearly up 115% since Memorial Day. Because see, a lot of this stuff really started exploding Memorial Day weekend, when people are out. And I was driving around and I'm looking at people just acting like everything is normal. I'm like, oh, I don't understand this. Hospitalizations of confirmed COVID-19 patients in Utah are rising quickly, from 149 a week ago to 174 on Friday. Hospitalizations were at 102 when the month began. Now, what happens is when people have to be hospitalized, especially if they're on incubators, they could be in the hospital for 2-3 weeks. Okay, and it's getting to the point. It's getting to the point where in a lot of these hospitals, they're just going to have to turn people away that come in. There won't be any more beds for them. And some of those people are going to go home and die. South Carolina. Now, South Carolina is where the Civil War started, April 12, 1861. And South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union, December 20th, 1860. South Carolina's 1,301 new cases and its rolling average of 1,094 new cases also set records. The state started the month with an average of 281 daily cases. So at the beginning of June, South Carolina had 281 daily cases. Now they have a rolling average of 1,094 daily cases. And Mike Pence is saying that the states have opened up responsibly and all this nonsense, all this flowery words that he uses. This is no. Tennessee announced 1,410 new infections, surpassing its previous single-day record by more than 200 cases. Hospitalizations are also rising in South Carolina and Tennessee, and what's happening is a lot of the rural hospitals, and 25% of African Americans live in rural America, a lot of the rural hospitals are not properly equipped. A lot of them are lacking the respirators, have a lack of ICU beds. And one of the problems that's been happening in rural America is an eradication of hospitals, because that deals with funding. Usually a lot of times funding from the state, or it could be from the federal government, which deals with politics. The reallocation of scarce wealth pound resources. So a lot of rural areas, they've been losing hospitals. Then you have a pandemic like this. Idaho announced 283 new cases, up from its previous high of 243 set on Wednesday. Record high 7-day case averages were reported by 13 states. Record high 7-day averages were reported by 17 states. This is the reporting from Washington Post, their article, 6 states see record number of new cases. Arizona, California, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Mississippi, Missouri, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, and the state of Washington. 13 states record high 7-day case averages. Now, in addition to the states that set records, the state of Louisiana, and Louisiana has one of the highest poverty rates in this country. The state of Louisiana has joined the states with rapidly increasing case numbers. Health officials announced 1,354 new cases on Friday in the state of Louisiana. 1,354 new cases. And Louisiana most likely also has a high rate of people who are uninsured as well. Okay? Now this was compared, they announced this on Friday. This was compared with 523 cases 2 weeks ago. And no cases in the 2 weeks before. So I'm going to try to post a link to the direct article to the Washington Post for this. But the name of this article, 6 states see record number of new cases, is at WashingtonPost.com. I have a bunch of articles here. We're going to zip through these. I just want to give you the highlights. Go check out the live updates from NBCnews.com dealing with coronavirus. It's right on their homepage, and they have a whole coronavirus section. Up at the top towards the left, click on coronavirus, NBCnews.com. Check it out also at WashingtonPost.com. Let me see here. I just want to zip through some of the most important things. The rest of this you can read yourself. Oh, this right here, American Airlines. You probably heard about this. This doesn't even make any sense. But the airlines are hurting for money. But, well, let's look at this. American Airlines announces social distancing on flights will end July 1st. July 1st, 2020. After capping the number of people on flights since April, American Airlines announced Friday that its planes will likely be full in a few days. Quote, as more people continue to travel, customers may notice that flights are booked to capacity starting July 1st. The airline said in a news release, American Airlines will continue to notify customers and allow them to move to more open flights when available, all without incurring any cost. American Airlines said that people could potentially move to other seats in the cabin if they're seated to someone they don't know, if there's room, and if there are no restrictions due to weight or balance or something like that. Coronavirus cases are increasing, and you want to stop practicing social distancing on airplanes. Oh, okay. I already told you. I don't know next time I'm flying. And I saw the on MSNBC, The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell. He did a segment that talked about how the risks of catching coronavirus and spreading coronavirus flying. And they weren't talking about inside the plane so much. They're talking about going through TSA. And TSA agents using gloves and having to go into people's bags and things like this, and can't change gloves every time they go into different people's bags, and patting people down and patting people's backs down and things like this. And the person, the expert that Lawrence O'Donnell interviewed, said the TSA agents should sterilize the glove. I don't know if they use hand sanitizer on them or something, but he said it's not practical for them to change gloves every time they deal with a different person. But they talked about the risk of spreading coronavirus going through TSA. That's before you get on the plane. Okay, so hold on. Oh, then Yeah, I saw this. I saw this article also from Washington Post. Almost 1/3 of African Americans know someone who died of COVID-19. Survey shows almost 1/3 of African Americans know someone personally who has died of COVID-19, far exceeding their white counterparts, according to a Washington Post Ipsos poll that underscores the coronavirus pandemic's profoundly disparate impact. Okay, and knowing people who died of coronavirus also then has or can have a traumatic impact on your psyche. It can impact your mentality, it can impact your enthusiasm, your outlook on life, etc. So this is huge right here. Read this article from Washington Post. Almost 1/3 of black Americans know someone who died of COVID-19, survey shows. The nationwide survey finds that 31% of, let me refresh the screen. The nationwide survey finds that 31% of African American adults say they know someone firsthand who has been killed by the virus, compared with 17% of adults who are Hispanic and just 9% who are white. Adding in those who know someone with symptoms consistent with COVID-19, slightly more than half of African Americans say they know at least one person who has gotten sick or died of the disease caused by the novel coronavirus. Fewer than 4 in 10 white or Hispanic Americans say they do. All right. In response to Mike Pence's dumb comments at the coronavirus press conference, Pence said it's a good thing new cases are among younger Americans. He said this is encouraging news, as the experts tell us, because as we know so far in the pandemic that younger Americans are less susceptible to serious outcomes of the coronavirus, and the fact that we are finding more younger Americans who've contracted the virus is a good thing. This is what this idiot said. Now, critics immediately noted that most countries are seeing total positive cases going down regardless of age. Others pointed out that while people under 35 may not be as vulnerable, the people they come in contact with could be vulnerable, something Mike Pence later acknowledged as well. Quote, none of us would want to bring the disease back to our parents or grandparents, moms and dads, an elderly friend, or a friend who has an immunodeficiency and cause a serious outcome as well. Younger Americans have a particular responsibility to make sure that they're not carrying coronavirus into settings where they could expose the most vulnerable. Well, why are you having these super spreader events? Why is Donald Trump having these super spreader events, potentially exposing his followers to coronavirus? These campaign rallies he's having. All right, so check out the rest of these updates from Washington Post. Now, NBC News. You know what? I'm going to go back to this article from New York Times. As virus surges, younger people account for a disturbing number of cases. As virus surges, younger people account for a disturbing number of cases. I'll share a little bit more from this one. I posted the link to it already. In Arizona, where drive-up sites are overwhelmed by people seeking coronavirus tests, people ages 20 to 44, people ages 20 to 44 account for nearly half of all cases. In Florida, which breaks records for new cases nearly every day, the median age of residents testing positive for the virus has dropped to 35, down from 65 in March. That's a huge drop. Now, median is a statistical measure. Just a second. Okay, now median is a statistical measure where half of the population is above a certain point and half of the population is below a certain point. In the state of Florida, they have seen the median age of residents testing positive for coronavirus dropping from 65 years old in March to 35 years old in, I guess it would be June. 35 years old now. In Texas, where the governor paused the reopening process on Thursday as hospitals grow increasingly crowded, young people now account for the majority of new cases in several urban centers. This is in Texas. In Cameron County, which includes Brownsville and the tourist town of South Padre Island, people under 40 make up more than half of newly reported cases. What is clear is that the proportion of people who are younger appears to have dramatically changed, said Joseph McCormick, a professor of epidemiology at UT Health School. It should be probably University of Texas Health School of Public Health in Brownsville. It's really quite disturbing, he said. Now, the pattern is drawing notice from mayors, governors, and public health officials and comes as a worrisome sign for cities and institutions as they look to the fall. The rise in cases among younger people could complicate the plans of leaders who are eager to open schools and universities, resume athletic events, and return to normal life and a fully functioning economy. The increases could reflect a simple reality. Since many states have reopened bars and restaurants and offices, the coronavirus has been allowed to spread more widely across communities, including to more young people. But people in their 20s and 30s are also more likely to go out socializing, experts say, raising concerns that asymptomatic young people are helping to spread the virus to more vulnerable Americans at a time when cases are surging dangerously in the South and the West. Okay, and then Dr. Robert Redfield, who's the director of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, he said on Thursday, June 25th, he said that younger people have helped fuel the increase in known coronavirus infections. He said younger people have helped fuel the increase in known coronavirus infections, and that in the past, many of those infections went undiagnosed. He said, quote, our best estimate right now is that every case that was reported, he said that for every case that was reported, there actually were 10 other infections, he said. Now this is Dr. Robert Redfield, the director of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. He said on Thursday, our best estimate right now is that for every case that was reported, there actually were 10 other infections. Now, no single answer fully accounts for the surge of cases among younger people who are less likely to be hospitalized or die from the coronavirus than older people. Okay, so read the rest of this article here. This is from New York Times. This is like a 7-page, 8-page article. As virus surges, younger people account for a disturbing number of cases. As virus surges, younger people account for a disturbing number of cases. All right, so we talked about Texas and Florida ordering bars to close and reversing course on their reopenings. Let's see here. Just a second. We also see that the Trump administration has asked the Supreme Court to strike down Obamacare. Okay, Donald Trump is doing this. If the justices agree, it could cost some 20 million Americans their health insurance coverage. All right. Then NBCnews.com has the article that was updated June 27th, 2020. U.S. coronavirus infections break record, hit nearly 46,000 in a single day. It was 45,942 new cases on Friday, according to the NBC News tally. The U.S. set a new grim record in the number of new coronavirus cases in a single day, adding up to nearly 46,000 on Friday. It was 45,942. And this was driven by more than 8,000 new cases in Florida and thousands more in Texas, Arizona, and California. Among all states, Arizona has seen the highest per capita rate of coronavirus cases in the last 2 weeks, logging more than 400 per 100,000 residents. Logging more than 400 cases per 100,000 residents. Arizona has 7 million residents, and its 30,000 plus new cases in that time period only falls short of the increases in California, Texas, and Florida. That time period was 2 weeks. Okay, so check out that article from NBCnews.com. U.S. coronavirus infections break record, hit nearly 46,000 in a single day. And let's see here. All right, so check out those articles that I gave you. We'll discuss this some more on the Sunday night edition of the African History Network show. All right. Also remember all of my DVD lectures are available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So I have my presentations dealing with the history of Black Wall Street and Juneteenth. We have those presentations there. Black Wall Street, from destruction to the resurrection of economic empowerment for African Americans, as well as Juneteenth history, Emancipation Day, but not Independence Day. We never got our 40 acres and a mule. Dr. King's Poor People's Campaign. We're coming to get our check. Okay, these are all available at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com right now. If you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network. $ the AHN show through Cash App. $ the AHN show through Cash App. Also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And okay, so we're going to get out of here. Follow me on my Facebook fan page, The African History Network. The African History Network. Turn on the notifications so you know when we go live. Also, follow me on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP, IMHOTEP. And let's see here. Check out the article from TheHill.com. TheHill.com. U.S. sets daily record for coronavirus cases. Also, so they talked. That came out, I think, Thursday, which was 25th. All right, listen to the African History Network show Sundays 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on 9:10 a.m. at Superstation WFDF. Here in Detroit, we broadcast on my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and my YouTube channels. So you can watch the shows live there, and also go back and watch the replay of them. Watch we have the videos there of of my show, and it's also in audio podcast format. We're on 8 different podcast platforms: iTunes, Castbox, Acast, FM Player, TuneIn, Stitcher. Okay, so if you go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, click on listen to podcasts. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.